All right, press start. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's program 93.1 RHL Radio Network as we present the 2025 Carter Cup Playoffs Round 1 Predictions live event. I am joined today by Redfire Roadblocks and Required. We will begin momentarily. All right. How are we doing today, Mr. Redfire?
Ready to predict.
Yes. All right. So our program today will consist of polls in the RHL stage like chat. So if every participant can open it up, and we will send out polls for each kind of bracket for each round, and we will do this for every round once it ends. So after round 1 in a couple, in a week or so, once it ends, we'll do the same thing for round 2, etc. So if one of you guys could pull up the stats for each team, or for at least in the playoffs, and we'll get started with
our standings. Redfire, do you mind pulling up the stats for each team?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
Do you want me to paste it inside the chat?
No, I'll just ask you to go over it, and
okay, yeah, I can do that.
So, again, hope everyone's having a great Wednesday evening as we will start now. So, the RHL bracket has been set with the Toronto Marlies clinching the last spot in the 2025 RHL playoffs after a interesting situation with Belleville forfeit. And
yeah, that was a little weird.
But we have the stage. It's set. So we have 4 rounds that we will go over today. Hartford versus Hershey, Wilkes-Barre versus Bridgeport, Toronto versus Syracuse, Laval versus Utica. So I think we're going to start off with one of the more anticipated, or actually we're going to go back to that one later, but let's start with Syracuse and Toronto. So if Required, you could let us know where both of these teams are in the stats and kind of the statistics.
Yeah, so it's looking like it's going to be on the Crunch's side in this situation. They're first place in the league with 16 points, 7 wins on the season. For Toronto, it's kind of the opposite: 6 losses, 1 win, 9th place. That to me kind of just seals the deal on that. But you never know. In the playoffs, it's like, this is the thing I like about the playoffs, right? You have 2 teams, any of them can win. There's always an upset, there's always comeback. So if you're Toronto, you're thinking you have to have a winning mindset, and I keep saying this, I've said this in previous podcasts. You have to have a winning mindset if you're Toronto, because if you go in and if you look at those standings and you go in thinking about those standings, you are going to lose. Syracuse is a very good team. They're on top of Laval, they're on top of Hartford. Like, they are the team in these playoffs. So yeah, that's kind of a stat rundown. I'll also go into more of the specifics. So as for the power play for the Crunch, it's average. It's 25%. It's nothing crazy. The PK is also average. It's 80. There's nothing really crazy there. So if you're Toronto, I wouldn't worry too much. It's kind of just average stuff. However, their own stats for Toronto: 11.1% on the power play. That's like the New York Islanders type power play, where you kind of just don't have a power play. You need to step it up. That needs to kind of be a better statistic when it comes to playoffs. 66.6% on the penalty kill. That's not good either. That gives the other team like over a 30% chance to score if they do get a power play. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the points, it's like a 13%, not percent, but 13-point difference. So I would say that if Toronto can go in with a winning mindset, I think it is that they have a chance. But if the Crunch, like the Crunch are the Crunch, right? There's 16 points, so I'll be curious to see what happens. I do think the Crunch will take it.
Yeah, and Redfire, what do you think about this matchup here?
Obviously it's been one-sided this entire time. Syracuse has been leading this whole entire time, 16 points, only 0 regulation losses, 1 overtime loss. It's looking really good for them. Where for Toronto, again, as already said, 6 regulation losses, 1 regulation win. So, but yeah, I think as long as Toronto focuses on their power play, they can get a lot of good opportunities against the Syracuse Crunch, though their penalty kill is really really good, 80%, and Toronto's is 66% for the penalty kill. So they also have a pretty good penalty kill percentage, but as long as they don't take any penalties, as long as they play a clean, fair game, they do have a chance of being in this. But for now, I will go with Syracuse.
Yeah, and I think this was a pretty big rebuilding year for Toronto. They've had some questionable moments in their management this year, which I think is very fixable. And they did get into the playoffs through luck, honestly. So I think their run is going to be pretty short. I still think they've had they did have an inaugural season, so they're working on it, but it's they definitely have potential. But Syracuse is definitely
Yeah,
powerhouse right
like
now, and
a lot of those
yes,
teams in that division are new, so it's like you
yeah,
can't
it's a brand
blame
new
them
division.
for being the
So
way they are.
yeah, so yeah, I think it's that's my opinion. I'm gonna send out a poll now in the chat, 93.1 radio network chat. Max or minimum I can make it is an hour, but we'll just kind of see what everyone says. It'll be sending out right now. So audience, go ahead. Let's see what you vote. I have a feeling for where this is gonna go, but yeah,
This is
at the moment,
okay.
very much
Yeah, it is very unanimous right now.
very unanimous for Syracuse. 5 votes to 0. And if anyone is joining in, the votes will still be open, so you can pitch in. And I'll actually announce that in the broadcast announcements. So,
Triple.
yeah. So I think Syracuse is going to move on to round 2 pretty easily.
It should be a
Um,
pretty smooth ride for that
yeah,
round.
but you never know. It's
Yeah.
playoff hockey. We'll see.
But again, it is playoff hockey. Yeah, you have Toronto, they're really bad. But again, if you go in with that winning mindset, you go in thinking you're gonna win, you never know what could happen
Yeah.
in any sort of playoff situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought at the moment looks like Syracuse is very much going to win, and I think that's going to select that. So let's move on to our second. I think it's in the 1 second actually. Our second matchup in the North Division. It will be Laval versus Utica. So Laval also a big powerhouse. We had a very anticipated matchup with Laval and Syracuse a couple weeks ago. Utica coming out as I think the underdog as well in this round. They've had a bit more success I think in this season than Toronto. They can win some games. But let's hear what you guys have to say, Redfire and Required, and we'll send the poll out.
Yeah, I mean this one's a little more of an even matchup, so this one is gonna be more anticipated for than the other matchup. Even though Laval's really good, like there's 6 and 2, right? Like 6 wins, 2 losses. So I feel like with Utica, they're like one game worse. That one game doesn't really mean anything when it comes to the playoffs. So I think it was a little while ago. I watched a Utica. I was commentating and broadcasting a Utica game. That game, I believe, they lost to a certain team. I think they lost to Belleville in a shootout. I believe. Um, those sort of games cannot happen when you get to the playoffs. So I feel like Laval kind of just goes in stronger. Like, look at their power play and PK stats. Their PK stat is nothing to be proud of. It's 70%. The power play at 70%, that is ridiculous. So you go into a power play with a 70% chance of scoring. That is something that's huge. It's huge. Special teams are usually the difference in playoff games. Utica, on the other hand, I mean, it's kind of the opposite for them, right? Power play, nothing to be proud of. 16.6%. It's not anything. But 42.8% on the penalty kill. It just seems like this matchup is very even when it comes to special teams. Like, as soon as Laval
Yeah.
gets as soon as Laval gets a power play, you run into a penalty kill that's 42.8%. And like I said again, like there's a one game difference, right? Like let's say Utica won one more game and lost one less game, then they're even, right? It's one game. So this one is a more even one. I'm going to go with Laval just because I just feel like they're higher in the standings first of all, but I see that winning mentality. Like they're a newer team and they come into the league and they just get second place, like right behind Syracuse. So I do feel like Laval will take it, but it will be close.
And not at all just because you're a Canadians fan. No, I'm kidding. um,
That
I'm kidding.
that could have some. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I actually wasn't
Um,
even thinking of that. But
yeah.
yeah,
And
go well.
Red Fire, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah. Obviously Laval, as both of you said, Laval's had a really, really good season. A lot of their games were really high scoring. They had a 5-4 win versus Belleville, an 8-1 win versus Toronto, a 7-3 win versus Utica, which was the only game they actually played against them. A 7-1 win versus Toronto again. So this team can produce shots. This team can produce goals. They've also had a lot of high shot games where it basically reaches 40 shots pretty much every game. But they're both brand new teams. They're both inaugural teams, and I'm guessing it is going to be a really, really close matchup. But for this one, I do have to go with Laval.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think Utica is they can make some stuff happen with their full roster. But I think Laval has had the better season, and they're gonna have a very strong drive in this playoff run. So the poll is now out in the chat. So if you guys can vote, and
By
right
the
now it
way,
looks
yeah, it's gonna be close this vote. And by the way, I did mess up that final score. It was actually 3-2 for Utica, but still going to a game in a shootout against that team,
yeah,
not the best.
and looks like it's 2 votes to 1. All right. So
Yeah, that's pretty close.
let's move on to a more kind of the original division, which
Oh yeah.
we all know and love, the Atlantic Division. So this division second season, so they're a bit more familiar with how this works. Let's start with, I think, a very highly anticipated matchup here. Big rivalry. We've had, second season now. I think this is one of the biggest rivalries in the entire league. Hartford versus Hershey. We had that
sure.
big fight night game. I think it was last year. We might have even had one this year. They have one every year. Very anticipated games. Both teams are very, very good. And they can make some stuff happen on the ice. So, if you guys can take it away, see what you
Yeah.
think.
This is gonna be, for me personally, this is gonna be the series of. I'm not being biased, by the way. Like this is completely the series of the playoffs, like in the first round at least. Like you have this rivalry, you have a rivalry of this caliber this early in the playoffs. It's gonna get heated. It's gonna be fun. Okay, you look at the standings, you see Hartford is higher. Okay, you look at the most recent game played between those two teams, and that differs from the standings. So it's really even, right? But Hartford has had more success in like during this season, and it kind of makes me feel like I'm gonna try not be biased here because I am a Hershey player, but Hartford I feel like has a better chance at succeeding in a playoff in playoff contention, right? Because 5-2-1, right? That's 2 losses. That's 2 times they lost in the season in regulation. That's something that's going to be really useful for them during these playoffs, right? You look at Hershey, 4 losses. That's 4 times. That's double. Okay, that's not really the greatest. So if you're Hershey, you got to look back. You got to reflect on the last time you played them, right? What did we do right? Right? We scored 3 goals. You know, we played a great game, right? What did we do wrong? We let in 2 goals. What did we do wrong on those goals? So you kind of have to just reflect on the previous matchup. Again, winning mentality as usual for every team, but especially the underdog for sure. As for power play and PK stats, you look at Hartford, ridiculous power play. You have Redfire, you have Hoopy, you have is it Hooper or Hoopy? I keep forgetting. Hoopy. Okay, it's you have Vic, you have everyone, right? You have a great stacked team. I think Hartford's the best team in the league. Me personally, I that's my opinion on that. Penalty kills just even actually I wouldn't say even better, but it is very good, 85.7%. So the special teams are absolutely insane. So you look at Hershey's, you have an average power play. That's 25%. I mean that's okay. That's kind of where you want to be, I guess, but you could strive to be higher. 100% on the penalty kill. I don't know how many penalty kills they had. I don't know if it was just one. I don't know how misleading that stat is, but 100% that's looking pretty good. So keep that up, and Hartford will not be able to score. However, I think that is a little misleading. They probably didn't have many penalty kills, but overall, in conclusion, I think Hartford's a better team going into this game. I think it will be extremely close. Like Hershey will take a game. I believe it's best of 3, isn't it?
Yes. Best of
Yes.
5, actually.
I
Best of
do
5.
best of 5. So I do believe Hershey will take 2, 100%. Like each team's getting 2, right? It's that third game. Who's gonna come out on top? Who's going to score that overtime winning ridiculous goal? Who's going to do that? I believe it's Hartford. They just have more talent, but it will be close. You never know.
Yeah.
All right, and yeah, again, I agree with Harvey Quard. Really close, really intense matchup. Both of these teams are really good. They had a lot of opportunities, a lot of high scoring games. Hartford had 3 players on the points leaderboard. You know, Hartford, lots of good players. Hershey, also lots of good players. They don't have any players on the points, top 10 points leaderboard, but they do have, I'm pretty sure every single player on Hershey has at least 5 or 6 points, which is, which is really good for them, meaning
Yeah.
everyone on their team can produce. Everyone on their team is good with the puck. And, you know, this series will be really good. I do think it will have to go to a game 5, an overtime or shootout game 5. So
That would be absolutely incredible. Game
I
5 overtime.
yeah, that's gonna be insane. I completely agree with that.
And Hartford was the first team to clinch the playoffs, so they've had and they've
Yeah.
had a great offseason. I think the best offseason in the league,
Excellent.
picking up
Excellent.
powerhouses of Hoopy and Jake, with and then
Oh,
developing
Jake
their
is someone I
veterans.
forgot to mention. He's absolutely
Yes,
insane.
of course.
Also.
And developing the veterans, Redfire and Vic, catching up on Otto as the goaltender, and overall just a very strong team. But Hershey, like you guys both said, they can really put up a good fight, and I think it is going to come down to game 5. And
definitely
looks
will.
like the votes are 3-1, with Hartford coming out on top. So we'll see how that goes. This one's gonna.
That's understandable.
That is going to be the series of the playoffs. for round one at least. I'm very excited. And finally, also a very exciting matchup, I think. Wilkes-Barre and Bridgeport, defending Calder Cup champions, coming up against also kind of a little bit of rivals, I would say, with the Bridgeport Islanders, rebranding from the Sound Tigers. So, they've also had, I think, a very solid season. They are up there, number 4, I think. They're a very good team, and this will also be a very interesting fight. So, what do you guys think?
Yeah. We have the Penguins, we have the Islanders. That to me is like probably that's the series that competes with the Hershey and Hartford series. Like that's the one where I feel like that's the secondary one I'm watching if I'm like a fan, right? You have a team that's 4th place. You have a team that's 6th place. So it's very close in standings, right? As for who's gonna take it, I mean this could be this is anyone's game. I do have my pick, but I will mention it at the end. But first, like, let's talk about special teams. I always like to bring up special teams. It's such an important stat when you talk about hockey because sometimes it is the game decider, right? So you have a 30% power play for Bridgeport, 37.7, 30.7 to be exact. That's good. That's gonna get you goals. That's gonna keep you in games. And 75% on the penalty kill, that's the one that's gonna bring him down. Like you have to be able to grind. That one person on that penalty kill, since it's a 2v1, that guy has to grind. That guy has to get that puck and spin it down the ice right away. As for the Penguins stats, it is not looking good. So this is where they're going to be weak. This is where the Islanders have the advantage, and this is where the Islanders are going to pounce on the Penguins. 0%. They haven't scored a power play goal all season. Okay, I don't know who's on that power play, but you got to get going because 0%. That's not going to win you a hockey game. Let's say you're down 2-1. You have a power play. It's like game 5, and it's a ridiculous situation. You need to score that goal. You need that goal. You need that goal. In that case, you'd probably pull the goalie as well, but I'm just saying. 56.2% on the penalty kill is also not going to cut it, right? That's just not good enough. You got to be able to kill penalties. That is a very good, solid power play from the Islanders. That's like a Winnipeg Jets type power play. So you have to be able to kill off that penalty. If you can't, there will be lots of goals, right? Both teams are going to take penalties. I can bet you on that. There's going to be at least a few penalties per game. So I do think this matchup, I think the Penguins will put up a fight. I think they'll win at least 2 games. At least 1 game. But I do think the Islanders have taken. I mean, every game I've broadcasted for the Islanders have always put up a fight, except for that one against Hartford. But other than that one, they've always really put up a fight against their opponent. So, yeah, Islanders for me. Right, Bar?
I agree with you. Islanders can take this one as long as they keep up, as long as they improve their power play, improve their penalty kill. Wilkes-Barre, yeah, special teams very important in this series. Yeah, nothing much to say. They have a pretty similar record. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're only 1 win away from each other's record. 1
Yeah.
overtime loss for Wilkes-Barre, 1 shootout loss for Bridgeport. So it's only a difference between 1 win and 1 loss. So it's gonna be a very close game again. I also think this is gonna go to a game 5. But I do think Bridgeport will come out on top. They do have a few good players like Rhino, Toronto.
Wow, that is an interesting vote. That is a wow.
I do I do think Bridgeport will
Yeah,
take this series.
Yeah, and
I
it looks like
agree.
there's a bit of a disagreement between the
Yeah,
audience and the
there's disagreeing
broadcasters.
with the audience. So
Yeah,
let's
I was
talk
also
about this for a
gonna.
second. If we can get someone, there we go. There's a Bridgeport. If you guys can like list your reasons, that would be great.
Yeah. But yeah, I was gonna agree with both of you guys. You
Right.
know, Wilkes-Barre, they had their Cinderella season last year. They
Yeah,
won the
yeah.
Carter Cup, but unfortunately, they lost players, and they're just not the same team as they were last year. And they're gonna and I'm thinking they're gonna fall short against
I
Bridgeport.
do like. I feel like it's gonna be. I could even see this one just going to like 4. Like I mean,
Yeah. But you know, if the audience, you guys can state your reasons, that'd be cool. We can check
yeah,
those out,
that'd be
and then
great to
we'll
argue
start
against.
wrapping things up. But
Yeah,
I think we have a very fun first round ahead of us. Very excited for that Hartford and Hershey game. Not biased at all. Um,
okay.
and that's fair. They are underdogs, you know, and there are always
Yeah,
upsets.
yeah.
They could,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, you never know. It's
They
playoff
could
hockey.
lock in. Yeah, they could
I
lock
just
in.
I just don't think there's as much motive as like a. I feel like as like a a preview like a reigning champion. I just feel like there's not as much motive compared to a team that hasn't won before. They're like kind of going for the first time and locking in the playoffs. I mean it's the reason, but I mean
Yeah,
if they do have that winning mentality, right? If that's what you're talking about, yes, that's totally understandable.
yeah. Um,
Not
cool.
necessarily, but yeah.
So, any final thoughts from you guys before we wrap things up?
Um, I mean, if I were to pick one team to shock me, I would definitely say Hershey or uh, Wilkes-Barre. Those two teams. I mean, I guess I can't really I'm playing for Hershey, so I guess I can't really shock myself with that. That doesn't really make any sense. Anyways, but I just feel like the matchups in the North are a lot more separated
Oh
than
yeah,
the ones in
yeah.
the Atlantic. So
100%
that's kind
agree
of my
with you
final
on that.
thought. But I mean, if I'm gonna pick a champion for this, I can't. Right? There's no way. There's no way. It's way too close. There's not really a bad team. I mean, good luck to all teams. Good luck to everyone. Hopefully we have another podcast before the
Yeah, we'll
um.
probably do like a
Well,
pregame one before our first game.
yeah, that'll
Um,
be good on
yeah,
Monday probably.
Monday, Hershey versus Hartford, actually.
yeah, that'll be
Yep,
fun.
and we could do on Tuesday as well.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an absolutely electric opening night for the
That will
playoffs.
be that. I believe that Hartford's
I
obviously
am
playing fun.
I
So
am expecting
yeah,
a
A lot of
very
fans.
big attendance.
Yes.
that will be huge. That will be a huge game,
It will
and
be very
the
big.
night after too, the Islanders and the Penguins.
Oh
That will
yeah,
also be a very.
Oh,
I believe it's that.
yeah.
Uh,
And
believe it's
Redfire, what about you? Any final things?
Final thoughts. If we were talking about teams that would shock you guys, a team that would really shock me, Toronto. But if they can beat Syracuse, that would be a real shocker. But
yeah, that would. I just don't think it's gonna happen, but I mean,
yeah. But if it does happen, that would change the whole
that would
momentum.
be the biggest shock. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
Utica making an upset. Yeah, I could. I yeah, I'm not gonna
I
jinx it. I'm
could,
not.
I
Anything
could
we
see,
say on here is not meant to jinx. Like we're not
oh yeah,
saying it. Yeah, like it's
I could see Utica making an upset, but I don't really believe in it.
Utica could
You know
totally
what I
make
mean.
an upset. Anyone can make an upset.
Anyone can
It's
make an
yeah,
just
upset.
a matter of who is. I don't mean to be cringe or anything, but who's in it to win it? Who like genuinely like that's literally
yeah.
it.
It's a matter of which
Uh,
team plays better, which team gets more opportunities, more pucks in
Which
deep.
team wants to win? Which
Which
team wants to lose? Right. I was watching the Habs and the Blues last night, and I see two teams coming in red hot. Right, they're both like on the playoff line. But the Blues won 6-1 because they wanted the game
Wow.
more.
Right.
Yeah, 6-1. Yeah,
Yeah.
so because they wanted the game more.
Yeah.
That's why they
whereas
won.
opposed to the Capitals and Jets game, both teams, Jets were looking for a playoff clincher. Capitals were looking to beat the Jets
Yeah, it's
for in the
it,
President's Trophy race, and it was a very close game, 3-2 in overtime. Both
yeah,
teams
I mean,
wanted it. Oh, it looked like both teams really wanted it. So
It's
That was
the playoffs.
a good
The
playoff
playoffs
preview.
cause this. They cause these this mentality of you this winning mentality. That's what they cause. That's what happens. And that's why I think any team can win.
Yeah. I think that's a solid place to end today's podcast. So, yeah, thank you for tuning in today on 93.1 RHL Radio Network. It's Vic, Redfire, and Required. Signing out. Have a good night.